Welcome back to the show, everybody. This is the Upper Tier Podcast, but it's Friday. We've got a preview for you. This is the Shankly Sessions, the Liverpool podcast we bring you each and every week. So tonight we're going to have a preview for the Brentford game. We're going to go through team news. We're going to have a look at both teams, see how they match up, where the danger is, all that kind of stuff. We're going to be talking about Mo Salah, and we're going to be again looking back at those fantastic records he just keeps on creating. Absolutely unbelievable. I mean, there's so many records broken at this stage. It's hard to even remember how many of them there is. I pulled down a little thing today that I seen on Twitter in terms of player rankings and stuff like that as well, and I wanted to take a look at that and maybe have a chat about it as well. We're going to be taking the press conference reaction, so we'll have a look at what the gaffer has had to say. Again, if you want to give us your thoughts on how you feel, how Arne Slot's coming across in these press conferences and post-match pressers and all that, couple of games in now at this stage between the pre-season and the game against Ipswich last week. And then we're going to have a look at something I'm sure you all want to look at, which is the transfer window, which is quite jarring. It's been jarring for months at this stage. And also the contract renewals. And I'm going to kind of try and keep them separate tonight because they both bring up a certain level of anxiety and problems and all that kind of stuff. But I think we should look at the two of them separately, not together, because I think they carry very different situations with very different ramifications if you don't get them sorted out. But again, we'll look at both of them, and any questions you have, pop your questions in there in the chat. Anything you want to ask, you can let me know what your starting 11 is. We'll get on to predictions. What do we think the score prediction will be for the game later on, and who's going to be the scorers and all that kind of stuff. But I suppose we should start with the press conference this morning. I think it's a good place to start. But before we get into that, my man Daz is back. What's the crack, Daz? Hope you were good, my friend. Good, man. Hope you had a good time last night. Was it last night you were footballing or at football? So hope you enjoyed it. But let's start with the press conference. And I find with Arne, where he's not he hasn't become endearing to me yet, if you like, and obviously we're coming off a situation of 9 years of Jurgen Klopp, so obviously Jurgen was like a father figure to a lot of us and stuff like that, so Arne is only basically in the door, so we have to give him a chance. But he's very, he has that kind of Dutch way about him, isn't he? He's a very straight shooter and very matter of fact as well and stuff like that. And also, first question came out, of course, on his first Premier League game at Anfield, and he says it's not going to be my first taste because we played Sevilla already, but it's clear that it's the first league game at Anfield. See what I mean? Matter of fact, no messing about. He says I'm looking forward to it, but I'm looking forward to every game I've played in the past as a manager and also this one. So he's coming from a very level-headed approach and stuff like that, and kind of like what he's doing is he's kind of, I suppose he's dampening down maybe the pressure of going out into the first competitive game at Anfield, if you like, and stuff like that. So the follow-on question then was trying to tease it out maybe a little bit more, because we know this kind of straight shooting matter of fact is going to be kind of weird in these press conferences because we're so used to Klopp throwing out these curveballs and bit of joke and jovial kind of stuff and all. So you get a little bit of that, but it's quite dry. So he says on how he manages nerves as a coach, and I think he made the point basically that there's no nerves. If you've put in the preparation and if you've put in all the work that week in the build up and you've done all your work and dotted your I's and crossed your T's, basically, there should be no nerves. Should be no reason for nerves to be there and all that kind of stuff. So he says, I hope the fans are twice as loud as the Ipswich crowd, because the Ipswich crowd was really, really, really loud. Good taste of the Premier League starting out back at Portman Road for Ipswich and the Ipswich fans. So good place to start. He says, I'm hoping the fans can be twice as loud as the Ipswich ones. That would be a big help for us. So straight away, gathering in the Anfield faithful, need to hear you on Sunday as well. Super Sunday against Brentford. Want to hear you guys. No nerves are there. It wouldn't be a good thing. If you've got nerves, then you probably don't trust what you did before. You just don't trust your team. I trust what we as a staff do during the whole week to prepare the team in the best possible way. And I trust the team a lot as well, again on Sunday. So making the point, of course, you have to put the work in. And that's the way it is, Then he talked on transfers. Big up, Everest. Good to see you in there, my friend. Thanks for joining us on the show. I think it's first time, is it? New here from Jack's channel. Big up, man. Sub to your channel as well. Love the chat on Jack's channel as well, my friend. But then he spoke on transfers, and of course he goes, I think you already know the answer. He's not going to be giving much away. I think they might have learned a little bit, got their hands slapped a little bit on the Zubimendi deal. So maybe they're learning now. Everything needs to be kept internal and real quiet. Pierce ain't getting any info. Joycey ain't getting any info. Ornstein ain't getting any more info. Making it very clear that if there's information to be put out when the deals are done, they will let us know. Until that moment, we don't speak about transfers or players that are not ours. I'm not being worried by the lack of activity, and this is going to be an interesting one because this is one that quite divides us as a fan base, doesn't it? When kind of we're so concerned about the lack of activity, plenty of outgoings going out, and look, they're doing incredible deals on that side of things, and we'll talk about it during the transfers. The money they're getting for some of these deals is absolutely exceptional. But he says no. He says, is he worried about them? He says no, because I trust the team. I've said many times before, I inherited a real good team, a team of many young players as well. I think we all know that especially young players can develop at the ages they are at the moment. So we just try to work as hard as we can with them, and we trust them a lot. They've proven last week that they earned this trust, and I'm hoping that they show the same on Sunday again. And then he goes on explaining how he wants the team to play. I think we are on a good track, if that's the way to say it, but we have to understand that some of them are only here for 3 weeks, and there's quite a large part of our group as well that are with us for 3 weeks. It's not only about us, it is also about the opponent, what they bring to the game. I think I said it before that Ipswich put a lot of energy in the first half to make it really difficult for us, or we stepped up, or Ipswich were not able to keep bringing the same energy in the second half. I think it was a bit of both. We got a bit more space, and then we can see how well these boys can play. There's still a lot of work to do, but it was a good first step, especially the second half. Yeah, and he spoke about he spoke about the youth as well, and he spoke about the outgoing players and stuff like that. And he goes that they want to play minutes, and if they can't guarantee them the minutes and all that kind of stuff, that then they have an opportunity to move on and get the minutes that they want. And also they're being sold for really, really good money, and that it's really important that that from the benefit of the club, from the benefit of the team, and from the benefit of where they're going and the player, it's so important. On how much he is learning about his squad and the competition he has. I'm learning every day still about these players, about the individuals, and also how they cooperate with each other. For me, the last week was not only important on Saturday, but the Sunday was also really important because I learned and saw there that ones that didn't play on Saturday were able to bring a really good training session in on Sunday. I think that's a real important thing for the team as well, because we all know we're going to need many, many, many of them during the season for a lot of the game minutes, and they brought in a really good training session on Sunday. That will help them and us for the rest of the season. Yes, I am still learning new things about the players, which is normal because, like I just said, with some of them, I only work for 3 weeks, so I'm still seeing new things from them. That's interesting when you explore that, because what we did talk about last week on the reaction show was we spoke about how he has them kind of working in little units. And that's why he's talking in there about how they cooperate with each other and stuff like that. And you could see second half how much better we were last week when we started moving in these units with the link-up play and everything else and all. So it's very interesting that it comes out in the presser as well. And it's good that he's focusing on that to see how they cooperate and relate with each other and all that kind of stuff, forge these kind of relationships, because we know if you form really strong relationships within these units, you get a much better level of output, and you also get a huge level of trust between each other and stuff like that. So I think he's trying to forge a lot of that as well, which is really, really important. On Joe Gomez, he says, yeah, it's his head being in the right place for 3 weeks. He's worked really hard since he came back, but he didn't play a lot at the Euros. When he came back the first sessions, he couldn't train. He was talking about how Joe struggled to finish the training sessions after his break from the Euros and stuff like that. So they've had to gradually build him up and all that stuff. But this week he had a good week in terms of load and how much he could do with the team. He's one of the players that I see new things from and learn things from what I see. Also combined with other players, it's been a good week for him and for us until now. So there you go, Joe Gomez. So, and I think if there wasn't a lot of this kind of move and all this sort of turmoil at the moment going around, especially in relation to Joe Gomez and stuff like that, I think Joe Gomez is a player that Arne Slot would really appreciate because of that versatility and flexibility and all that kind of stuff. Managers love to see that in the team. They always like to have one or two players like that that they call upon to do a job in multiple positions if needed. So versatile and stuff like that. Ultimately, though, I think he'll probably go. Possibly. Depends how many of these days keep him getting knocked off this list. Because I would imagine if Joe Gomez goes, Arna would need a player in, and whether we would have the time to do that and get the right player and all that kind of stuff and get the business done, we will see what happens. But the fact that he's back in training and Sunday will tell a tale as well, because if he's involved in the squad or if he's involved potentially in the starting lineup, who knows? Because he was brilliant for us last season at left back for big chunks of the season. But if he was interested in playing him and he was part of the squad and potentially used, then that might signal that maybe Joe was going to stay. But we'll see. Let's take some comments in here. Yeah, big up everyone new here from Jack's channel. Yeah, you're more than welcome, my friend. We really got to be stealthy during the transfers. Yeah, really do. And it's so important. I was going to talk about it later on, but we'll address it now. We can't afford to let another piece of transfer news slip out and not happen, because we are going to look so bad if that happens. I do feel sad to see the youngsters leaving permanently, since I really wanted them to someday become seniors. We all do, and we love to see that coming through and stuff like that and all, And for older, fans like me, we see it with Fowler and we see it with Carragher, Stevie and players like that and all, So, yeah, it is tough. But on the flip side of that, I'm happy to see Fabio Carvalho going off and getting a move and playing. I'm happy to see Sepp van der Berg move on and be playing and be happy in his career. I'm happy for Bobby Clark to move on and be playing. I don't want them just hanging around one day with all this hope and stuff like that, and then it can't be delivered. And I'm glad as well, and we spoke about it with other clubs as well, not kind of the same way, but I like that there's just a straight up no nonsense. This is the way it is, Now, maybe some ways it's tough, Hopefully Gomez stays. Yeah, he's so important to us. I don't think people realise how important Joe Gomez is to us. Realistically, like, even I'm sure he's excellent even around the training and everything and all, Does he rate Nunes and Endo? Well, that remains to be seen. I have a funny feeling with Arne Slot. Let me know your thoughts on this in the chat as well, folks. I have a sneaky feeling about Arne Slot that he wants to play with quite a tight, small squad. And we've seen it before as well with Klopp at times where he would use a really tight squad and he wouldn't have as many. And I think Aaron is quite the same. I think he'll have a starting 11 and then he'll have maybe another 8, 9 players, maybe 20 players in total. And I think it's going to be very, very difficult. I don't think you get into the side unless something tactically comes up or unless someone picks up an injury or something like that. I think he's going to eventually settle on a starting 11, and that will be your starting 11 week in, week out, unless he wants to change it up a bit for the Carabao Cup or whatever it is. But I think he will be on a tear this year. He'll want to deliver silverware this year in whatever shape, form, or fashion it might be. But I think he's going to work with quite a tight squad. And that's why I think when you see in the press conference, ultimately, if we listen to this a year in, we would be thinking, he's just covering for FSG. He's just covering for Hughes and for Edwards by saying these things and stuff like that. But I think because he's so new in and he's had a chance to look at stuff and all, and I think I think the one thing we know we're going to get with Edwards and with Hughes is they have a list of parameters for a player that they're looking for. They have a list of boxes that has to be checked. And I think if you don't check those boxes, regardless of the appetite for a player to come in to fill a position or to, pad out the squad to make sure we're covered and all that kind of stuff, I don't think these guys are going to push the button on it. I think these guys know that there's a pot of cash there, a certain amount of money there. And I don't mean small amount. I know we've plenty of money. But I think they're going to be so careful in the way in which they spend the money. And I think every time they'll want to get it right time and time again. And I think and it's frustrating the hell out of us because listen, we're all here, we're all Liverpool fans. We all want Liverpool to win every competition that we enter. We all want signings to come in. We all want us to be successful. We all want Arna to be successful. We all want to play successful, really good football, entertaining football, and all that kind of stuff. Um, but it's an interesting approach, and it's a different approach, and it's something that we're probably going to have to get a little bit used to as well. And of course, in the background, the whole FSG thing, there's an argument for all that, and that argument pushes out there as well. And I think what have we got? We've 8 days left. So of those 8 days, what's going to happen? The clock is ticking. I still think I'd be very disappointed if we don't get at least two players in. At least two players. Um, but let's see what happens. But yeah, I don't know. It's going to be very difficult to judge them until he actually sees them. And I know he's been around them and stuff like that and all, but Darwin is such an interesting character that it's I don't even know, does the training translate to the matches, or because we're not privy to it and stuff like that, so I'm not too sure. But I think what he will do is, I think if you look at tomorrow's team, without giving it away, and we'll talk about it, I think he'll go with pretty much the same except Konate. That's what I think will happen. I'd be surprised if he changed it. And I think that's the way it's going to be. I think he's gonna persist with a starting 11. And I think only through injury or absolute tactical change of a real difference will he change it up. And I think at times within matches, players will be called upon and stuff like that. But I don't think we're going to see from this guy. This guy seems really, really level headed and very, very, I'd say he's very, very straight shooter with guys and in the way he talks to players and all. But I think he's very level headed in the way he makes approaches and the way he takes steps and stuff like that. And it's going to be interesting. But yeah, good question. I'm not too sure is the answer because I don't know because we haven't really seen them and we're only going on what we seen last season and stuff like that. Yeah, but great question. Everest is in, but the current pace of football, the injury crisis would hamper us in the long run. Slot should bear in mind that our team is always involved in at least 4 different types of competitions. Absolutely, and this is going to be the problem. You roll the dice on this, and we've done it so many times. And you roll the dice, and you roll the dice, and you roll the dice, and then all of a sudden, boom, Jota gets injured or something like that. And I'm hoping what they're going to do with Diogo Jota is like what they did last week at Ipswich, is when he's done what he has to do, get him out of there. Don't prolong it. Don't let him get injured and just manage his minutes where they need to be managed. Remember, for years, we had problems with Joel Matip constantly breaking down and getting injured and all. And then through some of the sports science stuff we did and the way we used his minutes and the way even in the way we used Joel Matip at times and stuff like that, we figured out a way at times to keep him fit. And that's what we have to do with Diogo Jota. We cannot afford to be losing someone like Diogo Jota, who's so clutch in front of goal for any kind of length of time and stuff like that. I mean, now through history, when Diogo gets a knock, even if it's a calf or something like that, you could be losing a month or 2 months. It's too much, and we can't afford to do it. So it's going to be very interesting, and I think Arna will see that once we get into the real bounds of this, and the Champions League kicks in, and the Carabao Cup, and everything else, and all, and there's games coming at you thick and fast, potentially 3 games a week and stuff like that. I think he will recognise that that it's a much bigger squad and stuff like that that needs to be brought in there and all that kind of stuff. But we shall see. But great point, Everest. I just want signings to compensate for our lack of depth in certain areas. I would never want our club to be moving mad like Chelsea. Yeah, I think, the problem with that at the moment is, and I think where we're going to see it is, I think what he's trying to do is not only even in the cover and in the bench, but also in the starting 11. I think he's trying to raise the level off the floor. I think he's trying to bring, I don't mean we're on the floor, but I think what he's trying to do is any move that we make needs to be a step up improvement and stuff like that. And I don't think these guys are going to be the kind of guys that Now, hopefully, we are back. Yeah, sorry about that, folks. There's a bit of a storm here on the east coast of Ireland at the moment. Now we should be back. Now, folks, hopefully we're back. Let me know, Everest, that does. If you're in the chat, let me know if we're back. But yeah, no, I get you, Everest. We were talking about that, about compensating for the lack of depth. Yeah, but I just think it's really, really important that when we're compensating for that, that it's the right level of player. Yeah, stream. It's just the internet just went there, just lashing off the window here, rain and everything. I hear nothing anymore. No. Uh, Everything okay now? Let me know in the chat, folks, if everything is okay. It should be, as far as I know. Um, yeah, yeah. Right. So let's talk. Let's continue on with the press conference. Anyway, he was talking about Joe Gomez, and of course, uh, we spoke about that. He says on the business done with Brentford this summer. He says, I think they brought in Theo Fabio Carvalho and Sepp van der Berg, really talented and good players. You could ask yourself the question, why do they leave? Both of them have played a lot of minutes last season, and I think both of them wanted to continue that journey of playing time. I think they were able to play for us, but there's so much competition in the positions they play that they wouldn't play every minute of every single game. It was a really good deal for us, and I think it's a really good deal for Brentford and also a good deal for the players. So everybody is happy unless they do too well on Sunday. So I think what he was making the point there was, he says, if you look at, for instance, Sepp van der Berg, Sepp van der Berg was probably going to be fifth or sixth choice centre back, and he made it very clear in pre-season that he wanted to move if he wasn't going to be guaranteed minutes and all that kind of stuff. So that's just an example there. He also spoke on Brentford and Thomas Frank, because you can see their manager is there for a long time already. In the last game against Crystal Palace, they could play 4-4-2 and could play 5-3-2. So they can change systems within a game. And I think that's highly possible if you work with a group of 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, maybe even after a year. It's still not possible because it's so difficult to bring the best of them in one system. So if you can play two systems with them, you have to make the conclusion that Thomas Frank is doing a really good job over there for a lot of years already. They played a really good first game as well as good pre-season, so it's going to be a challenge for us to play them on Sunday. That's fair enough, and we expect that from Brentford, don't we? On Jarell Quansah's response to being substituted, he clarified the point that he made at the weekend, was it that he wasn't losing all his duels, that he had lost a number of important duels during the game, and he felt that the lap was getting on top there and causing us a lot of problems, so he felt he needed a change. He said that he explained to Jarell, he spoke to him after the game. Jarell was also in on Sunday. He came in to do a session, but he picked up a slight tweak. So he's going to see if he can train today, potentially to be involved in the squad, but he's not too sure. And selling some youngsters so far during the transfer, on selling some youngsters so far during the transfer window. That's always a difficult one because young players want to play as well. And if they want to develop, they have to play. It's always like this. They come through the ranks of the youth academy, and either then you're good enough to play for us many minutes, or you're still not there and there's too much competition in your position. I think still this team will want what we have a lot of homegrown players. One of them, Trey Inyoni, is also training with us on a daily basis, but is only 17. The club will always bring big, good youngsters, and it's always a challenge to find the right moment to either play them, or if they played quite a lot of minutes, they want to make the next step in their career. And if that is not possible because Virgil van Dijk is playing here, or Mo Salah is playing here, or all the other top players are playing here, then it's best for them to go seek a club and play minutes, which is really, really important. And I think that's a fair point as well. He talks about on whether the team's centre backs are competing to play alongside Virgil van Dijk. He said Virgil came in 3 weeks ago and, in my opinion, made a lot of impact. He made a lot of impact in all these years he's played here. But me working with him, he's shown how much he cares about the team and how good he is. For him, it's the same with Mo, like all the others. They still have to bring their performances in. So, in my opinion, there are 4 players in competition for 2 positions at centre back. At this moment, it is clear Virgil is playing, and he is also going to be playing on Sunday if he is fit. Spoke about on Ryan Gravenberch in the 6. He said he has played him a couple of times in the 6 and he's looked pretty good in that position. He said he has running capacity so he can keep on running. He has a nice height and he is really comfortable with the ball. So he has some attributes that he could play in that position. But still a lot to prove for him. As for all the others, we have other options in that position as well. Interesting competition in many positions. And on Gomez's future. At this moment, I'm expecting everyone to be here, but like you know, you are maybe even longer into football than I am. Looking at you, you are a little bit older than me. Everything can change. That was on there. That was his reaction. I think it was James Pearce who asked the question. Yeah, and of course, James always finds a way of asking the question, maybe just in a slightly different angle. But you're not gonna catch Arna that way. He's too clever for that. That rounds out the presser. So it was an interesting presser. Kind of reaffirmed some of the stuff that we picked up on from the last game and the post-match interview. But also some interesting bits there on his view on the youth and, given a chance if the pathway isn't there, then move on, develop your career, get minutes, go to another club, And I like that bit of honesty. I think that's really, really important. So not too bad. So now if we get into it, let's get into some team news. Let's talk about it. Where are we? So obviously, Ebu was probably going to slot in there with Jarrell. I did have a slide. Maybe I might be able to bring it in. I've done up slides, but our good friends in bring in the Brentford one as well. I should be able to slot these in pretty quick. Just give me a second because our good friends in Air took out a lot of my slides when it rebuilt it or recalibrated, if you like. So yeah, if you look at there's the Liverpool side there. As I said earlier, what I'm thinking is, and let me know your Liverpool side in the chat as well, folks. Let me know what your starting 11. Do you think you will make changes? Could you see Joe Gomez going in at left back potentially? Andy Robertson last week still looked a little bit laboured in that position, and of course, Costas coming in didn't look a whole lot better, to be honest. But let us know your thoughts on that left back position as well and stuff like that. And I did kind of allude to it last season and the latter ends of last season on the podcast that, the left back position is something that needs to be looked at. And I mean in totality. But yeah, I think the only difference from last week, I think, is going to be Kanate going in there. So we're going in with Allison, Trent, Ebu, Van Dijk, Robertson, Dominic, Ryan in the 6 again, Mac in that releasing 8 role that we want, and then Luis Diaz, Diogo Jota, and Mo Salah, I think he will go with. So that's what I think we're looking at in terms of Liverpool. No surprises there, really. Probably what we expected. Now, if you look at Brentford are going to go with Flecken, obviously, in goal. Then you have Royston. Then you have Collins, Pinnock, Ajer, Jensen, Norgard, Janelt, and Buemo. I think he might put Tony in and Visa. I think he might go attack on this one. Visa, of course, last week had a great game. And I think he's looking for a Premier League record as well, isn't he? First player to go, was it 4 games or 5 games? I think it's 4 games I read. Let me see now. I read it earlier. Where are we? Visa. Gonna go, I think, 4 games where you score and assist in 4 consecutive games. But I think he might put Tony in there. I have a funny feeling because Tony, we know, is back training with the squad this week. And if he's back training with the squad, that means one or two things. It means either, obviously, they want to keep his fitness up and all that kind of stuff, but either there's no deal or no one's interested, and Brentford have resorted to the fact that he's going to be there for the season. So obviously Thomas Frank would want to start using him. And if we see him in the squad, potentially, or in the starting 11 on Sunday, then we know there's no deal there that Tony is staying where he is this season. So that's my only view on it. When I heard he's back in training with the squad, and when you look at Brentford as well, they can ill afford to be leaving out a guy like Ivan Toney and stuff like that. His goals are so crucial to them. And also, his link-up play and his understanding with Mbuemo and with Visa is really, really, really important as well. So I think Frank might play a blinder here, and I think potentially he could go back in there. I'm not sure where they fully resided to lose them. I know there's been kind of started out at a crazy 70, 80 million. It's come down to 60, 50. It's at 40 now or something like that. I know Arsenal had a look at the boy, but I don't think they're going to pull the trigger on him. Another more people might be interested in him. Who knows? Even Chelsea might take a look at the boy, because we're hearing that the Lukaku deal with Napoli this evening hasn't happened. It's not going to happen by the looks of things. They can't agree on the fee or something like that, which means that would impact, I would imagine, on the Usman deal. And if they're not going to get Usman in, then they might switch the other way, and maybe they might pursue something like Ivan Toney. Who knows? Daz back in. Sorry about that technical stuff, Daz. Allison, Bradley. You're going with Bradley, are you, this week? Bradley going in there. Ebu, Virgil, Robbo, Dom, Ryan, Maka, Salah, Nunes, Diaz. So you're thinking Jota come out, manages minutes. Not a bad idea. Nunes goes in. I wouldn't be upset at that at all. Bradley going in. I don't know, Daz. Would he do that when they just announced there the other day that Trent's contract is the number one priority for them at the moment. So I don't think he's going to drop Trent. I'd be surprised if he did. Now listen, we know how good Conor Bradley is, so I wouldn't be overly upset about it. But I think that would be a big call second game of the season. But not a bad shout. I mean, and it's look, it's not a starting 11 we'd be upset with, is it? But yeah, interesting. Team news. The only thing we spoke about, obviously, Jarrell and stuff like that, and obviously if there's any other players kind of on the cusp. We know if Joe isn't involved this weekend in terms of the squad. We know last week they said they left him at home. It looked on the face of it if it was probably transfer related and stuff like that. But from the soundings from Arna today at the press conference, it wasn't transfer related. It was just he's not up to speed yet, so he's had another week. So we'll see. He'll be up to speed this week. Is he going to be in the squad? Could he potentially even be in the starting 11 at left back? Because I'm sure Arna looked at left back last week and he wouldn't have been overly impressed with it, to be honest. Ryan, of course, in the six, we spoke about Virgil, all that. For Brentford team news at the moment, Rico Henry still out with a knee, Igor Thiago with a knee as well, Josh Da Silva with a knee as well. Running knee is there at the moment at Brentford, and Aaron Hickey with a tie as well, but he's potentially expecting him back after the September international break. So the real question that's over this is Ivan Toney. Is Ivan Toney, is he going to be involved? He's been training with the squad. Is he going to be involved? And obviously, with Visit, that's what we're talking about there. He's the first player to ever score and assist in 4 successive games in the Premier League. So that will be interesting. Be interesting as well to see. I haven't included Sepp van den Berg in the starting lineup, but would he potentially go into the starting lineup, or would Thomas Frank want to see a bit more of him? And we haven't mentioned Fabio Carvalho as well, who got 6 or 10 minutes last week or something like that. Nothing huge and stuff like that. So there's your lineup. You're looking at Alisson, Trent, Konate, Van Dijk, Robertson, McAllister, Gravenberch, Salah, Szoboszlai, Diaz, and Jota. As we said, and Brentford, as we said, pretty much the same as well. Not much of a change there. Do they still go with Shada, or do they throw Ivan Toney in there? Big game coming up at Anfield, massive for Brentford as well. So let's see what happens on that. But they're your lineups from what I can see. Now, this is something I seen today. I seen this ranking today on Twitter, and it's kind of weird because I don't kind of buy into these ranking things when it comes to players. Because for me, when you look at that, you have Mo ranked as number 1. But I look at Mo ranked as number 1, and I could rate Alisson number 1 as well, because I think what Alisson brings to the side at times and what he does and how he performs as well is as much a ranking number 1 from the back end of stuff as Mo is a ranking number 1 at the front end of stuff. So I don't know how these ranking things goes, but what I was concerned about, And if you look at those, if they are the top 5 players in terms of ranking, we could have a discussion about Diaz or McAllister or whatever it is, who you want to put in there, Jota, who knows. This is just a ranking I pulled from Twitter. What does scare me on this is you look at those 5 rankings there. Mo Salah up for contract renewal. Trent up for contract renewal. Virgil up for contract renewal. Luis Diaz has been thrown shade a little bit through the dad about moves and all this kind of stuff, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen, not at this stage. And certainly not to Barcelona with the state of their finances at the moment. And then, of course, we Big Ali down the bottom. And I think the move that we've made for the goalkeeper, that we're trying to get across the line, I think it's either 30 or 35 million. I think there's probably soundings there that Ali's going to probably give it another year. And then if you look at that goalkeeper situation there at the moment, we know Kelleher wants to become a number one at a team in the Premier League potentially. So he's probably sounding out moves as well. And we know Adrian had moved on. So when you look at those, if they are potentially your top 5 rankings, I'm not saying they are, they're not mine, they're not yours, whoever it is. There's issues with all those. And they're the top 5, So really, 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 really interesting. Hey, so this is Pat McAfee Show live from Junior Matins today with Seamus. Yeah, seen that as well, yeah. And Forbidden Door pay-per-view live from London 2025. Interesting. But yeah, I just brought this up. It's just an interesting topic of conversation in terms of rankings and stuff like that as well. Right. We got to talk about this transfer window. It has people gone perplectic, and I'm not surprised. Big drink of water required there. Right, so we'll start first of all with the contract renewals. 3 guys are in the background, 3 guys are in the forefront. How do we feel this is going to go? And where do we feel it's going to sit? Are we staring down the barrel in 12 months' time of losing these 3 guys? Are these 3 guys, have their heads been turned by a number of things? Obviously, Jurgen gone. Obviously, the club potentially showing a lack of ambition in the market to give Arne all the tools that he needs to compete with City, to compete with Arsenal, stuff like that. And when you look at the top teams in the division, probably with the exception of Villa, but if you look at the top 3, ourselves, Arsenal, and Man City, there's only been, although we have done no business, we're hoping the goalkeeper gets announced pretty soon, but although we have done no business that will impact the current squad in terms of incomings, there's not a lot of business has been done. Like if you look at Man City, they brought in Savio, which was kind of an intergroup kind of transaction, if you like. Julian Alvarez went out the door. So with Savio coming in and Alvarez go out the door, have they strengthened? Questions. Now we're hearing Gundogan was announced back. He was a huge player for them. And obviously he will lift the squad greatly and he'll slot back in there. And obviously, to have him around again is going to be massive for them. Very clever by Man City. Very, very clever. So when we look at our transfer window, because they're both intertwined, because what are we doing? Are we not going to contract renew these guys? Are we stockpiling cash for next summer? And that cash is going to be used. And I know, listen, to replace any of these 3 guys is going to be a disaster. It's going to be very, very tough. It's going to be near impossible, because I often say you don't replace a player like Mo Salah. We didn't replace a player like Robbie Fowler. We didn't replace a player like Steven Gerrard. What you do is you sign a different player and they come in, but you don't necessarily replace them because they're legends at the club. So it's going to be really, really difficult, and it's going to be tough on us as well, because I think the Trent one, if we start with that, because he's 25, I think it is now, and we know he's a future captain. He's the scouser in our team. He's the shining light. He's the academy boy who came through. He's the Stevie. He's the Cara. He's the guy. You know what I mean? And to lose him in the fashion like we did with Macca years ago, and in a very different way as well. Because we know Trent bleeds red. You know what I mean? We know we know he bleeds Liverpool and the city and everything else and all that. But There's obviously going to be a massive contract on offer there. The talk is Real Madrid. You know, you've the Jude Bellingham connection there with him and stuff like that. And where we thought, where we thought Trent was doing a number on Jude to try and convince him to come into us, maybe all along potentially it's been the other way around, you know. But I think Trent would be a huge statement loss. Not that the other two won't. But I think Trent, because he's coming into his prime and his best years are ahead of him and stuff like that. And you could see where he turned around and he said he doesn't want this to play out in public. He wants it to be handled privately out of respect, probably for himself and the club and the fans. And we've seen some leak stuff come out at the moment that I think is bullshit and all that. The wage demands are through the roof, over 300,000 and all this kind of thing. A lot of that I think you could take with a pinch of salt. I think a lot of that is leaked out there just to ratchet us guys up and stuff like that and all, you know. No doubt it would be a big contract for him and well deserved as well. So his is an interesting one. And we read a report there yesterday that that's one of the priorities to get done. And that they said that sometime outside of the window then they're going to be looking at Mo and at Virgil. Now we know that Mo has had huge offers from Saudi. It's no secret. We were hit with offers last season. At the last window, last summer and stuff like that, massive money was offered, 120, 150 million, 180 million, whatever it was crazy numbers anyway. And we know that sitting at the end of this season, there's generational wealth, multiple generational wealth waiting on Mo Salah if he took that move to Saudi. So the question is that where Mo Salah now sees his contract? And again, ambition of the club and everything else has to be taken into consideration. But I just wonder if that generational wealth, is that something, you know, is it something we can even combat? You know what I mean? Like if this guy is being offered, you know, Kylian Mbappe level contract, like 100 million signing on, couple of million a week, all these bonus, treated like a god. Does he want to experience a culture similar to his own? Does he want his kids and his wife now to move out of Liverpool and go to Saudi to experience that culture and raise his kids in that culture now and all that kind of stuff? There's so many different factors. The generational wealth, where he's securing the wealth and the future of his family for so many generations, his grandkids, their grandkids, so much money. And it's going to be very difficult for Liverpool, you know, to turn around and change that, except if you look at Mo Salah, there's probably 2 to 3 years of Mo Salah still at the very high level. And does he consider that a priority? Would he consider wanting to end his career at Liverpool? Or the attraction of this other side of things, is it too much? And are we just playing on, you know? Good man, Henry. Good to see you in there, man. Good to see it. Liverpool 3 or 4. Mo Salah and Trent will leave. I know it's tough, isn't it? It's tough on the backdrop of everything else of not getting people over the line as well. Tony Khan has an announcement tomorrow on Collision regarding Tony Khan's announcements. Good Lord. Has Collision already happened after Dynamite? Yeah, but we won't get to see it till the Friday. I thought that was Rampage Acers. Yeah, that's what I thought as well. What's the crack? No, I can't stay. I have a podcast, but I have left a like. You're a gent, Henry. Appreciate it as always. But I think these three, you know, where it's kind of interconnected at the moment, and you know, we can look at the Zubamendi deal, and we can look at the release clause. We can look at what we offered if there was a payment plan, tripling the guy's wages. We offered him everything, and we just couldn't get it done. And we knew it was going to be a difficult one. It wasn't going to be that straightforward because a lot of top clubs have come in for that guy, and they haven't been able to get him out of there. So it's really, really, really difficult. And we knew that was going to be the case. Now, should we have been a bit more decisive in our action? Probably. Should we have not given him the time to think about it and all that kind of thing? But then you kind of worry if the lad had to come in to the club and this was where his mindset was at, that he loves Sociedad, he loves living there, all that kind of stuff. And, you know, if we're led to believe the food and the culture and the lifestyle and the view and all the mountains and all this other stuff that was painted and stuff like that, is it just a case that he's a guy who just wants to stay there and that's where he wants to be? He wants to be a big fish in that pond and doesn't necessarily want to step out. So he didn't necessarily make the decision for pure footballing reasons. He certainly didn't make it for financial reasons because obviously the financials that we offered them would have been way above what Sociedad could offer them. And we know that there's been some issues there since then in terms of the back and forward with Sociedad in relation to the financials. But it's a shame we didn't get him in, and it's again a demonstration from the likes of Edwards and Hughes as well that like when we are looking for a certain player, every box has to be ticked. Now, do we argue we should be a little bit more flexible that maybe if there's 8 boxes, you should only have to tick 6 and we could go with that? Could we go with an Ederson? Should we have pursued a Palhinha or Fulham? Are we looking for a different type of 6? Is the 6 position evolving as we speak and stuff like that into more of a kind of a confident ball playing kind of player in a pivot rather than the traditional 6 destroyer or whatever it is? Who knows, and there's so much out there, the word pivot, the number 6, 6.5, all this kind of stuff being juggled around, so we don't really know. But the fact is, the guy in the end made the decision not to come. I don't think there's a huge amount more we could have done, except we could have been a little bit, maybe more decisive in doing it quicker. But then if he came, would he have been happy enough to come, or would he been a bit, would he been a bit disgruntled? Would we have gotten the Zubamendi that we see at Real Sociedad, or would he have been a miserable fucker in Liverpool, to say the least? Let's see what happens. That's what had to be weighed up as well and stuff like that. And I mean, if he didn't fancy the move, he didn't fancy the move, and there's no point in dwelling on it. But yeah, I think with these three, it's going to be difficult. We heard Van Dijk a couple of weeks ago talking about how he wants the club to get signings in, that things need refreshing. It's a new start with Arna and all this kind of stuff, and it just hasn't happened. Now, we've 8 days to go, and we know how decisive Edwards can be, and we know at the moment that the club is ghosting everyone at the minute. There is no information coming out, and anything that you hear that's coming out is not legit. All this information coming out that we're not going to go for a 6, or we're not going to make a sign-in, or we're not going to try and do this or that and the other. Don't believe it. Everything has gone dark at the moment. So they're obviously working on stuff. They obviously know if the likes of Gomez was to go, or, if other players were to go and stuff like that, that void would have to be filled. We can't empty the tank totally like that and expect Slot and the team to go through a season back in the Champions League and everything else and all with what he's left with to use and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see. There has been links, crazy links with the boy off Napoli, Kvaratskhelia and stuff like that and all. Pinch us all kind of stuff. I think that would be a huge deal to try and get through. Now, you're going to get that done in 8 days. Most of those kind of big deals take at least a month to get over the line and stuff like that. So I wouldn't believe it. And I'm at the stage, and I've said it to everyone else, until they're standing there holding the jersey at Anfield, I don't believe anything. And that's what I said. I even said it on the Zubamendi deal. I said it before he even retracted and pulled out. Unless he's standing there holding the jersey at Anfield, forget about it. Or at the training centre, forget about it. It's just, it's not real. It's just not real. And that's the way it panned out. And I said it after 2 days when they said he was going to have a think about it and stuff like that. If he's going to have a think about it, if you're not straight away all in thinking Liverpool, forget about it. It's not going to happen. That decision should have been made before anything progressed. Right. So on these, I think it's going to be very difficult to turn Mo's head. We know that. And we know, if I speak, there will be fire at the end of last season, stuff like that. So there's clearly stuff that's gone on there during the last year of Klopp being there or whatever it is that doesn't sit well with him. I don't know whether that's been resolved, whether it's been a meeting with the club and stuff like that. He certainly looks a lot happier in himself. Certainly looks like he's enjoying his football a lot more than he did last season. We know there was a lot of crap flung his way by Egypt as well through the AFCON and everything that happened there as well. Virgil is a big one for me. He's the club captain. Again, I don't know. It's for Virgil and Mo, it's their last kind of big contracts as well, I would think, at the age that they are. So that's why Trent is so different. Trent probably has this contract coming up, plus another big contract. If he signs a 5-year, the current contract will bring him up to 30. And then they're normally 5 years, maybe plus an optional year. And then his last big contract would be at 30 on. So he has 2 big contracts. But for the 2 boys, I think this is their last big contract as well. And I think that that's really important to understand that as well, that if someone does come in, we heard Kevin De Bruyne even talk about during the summer with Saudi, the money that can be earned out there, the generational wealth and stuff like that. Now, we know he didn't take it. and probably had to be heavily convinced and stuff like that. And it's probably an easier option if you're playing at a team like Man City that's winning and is successful and stuff like that, albeit charges hanging over and stuff like that. But still, it's a much more difficult decision. But for these two boys, I think if people come in, namely Saudi Pro League with big contracts, I think it's going to be very, very difficult for Liverpool to turn their heads. Now, the argument for us is, why have we found ourselves in a situation where these contracts are all kind of clustered together and we're going to have an exposure there? Because if next summer we lose the three of these boys, boy, oh boy, oh boy, do Edwards, Richard Hughes and Arne Slot have a huge task on their hands next summer. But let's see what happens. So that's contract renewals. That's all I can say on it at the moment. I would hope Trent would re-sign. I see Trent as a future captain for Liverpool Football Club and stuff like that. I hope all three re-sign. But Trent is one that I think is pivotal in terms of looking into the future and stuff like that. I think Virgil and Mo really, really important as well. But I don't know. Maybe they might sign contract extensions or something like that. Let's see what happens. But it's going to be very, very, very difficult if that kind of offers are on the table and stuff like that to combat them, because Liverpool ain't in a position to offer these boys that kind of generational wealth and stuff like that. So if it becomes a financial thing, or if it becomes a situation within your career where you still feel you're competitive and you have a number of years left, do you want to go off to the Saudi Pro League at that stage? And would there be still a reasonable Saudi offer on the table if you readdressed it again in 2 or 3 years' time or something like that? So let's see what happens. Difficult, real difficult. These three boys, so pivotal to the team. Now, this is what we want to talk about. We've obviously covered Zubamendi and stuff like that. I'm not sure how Joe's feeling at the moment. Obviously, with this whole link to the Gordon move for Gordon up at Newcastle. Not sure how I felt about that move as well. And I wasn't even sure, like, if Anthony Gordon came in, when Joe Gomez went up there as part of the deal, we probably still have to go in and probably replace Joe Gomez, because we're not replacing Joe Gomez with Anthony Gordon. It's not like for like, so we still would have had a lot of work to do there. Plus, we're bringing in another left-sided player and stuff like that. So how does that work with this stack of left-sided players that we have there, So I'm not too sure what way that would work. Obviously, we'd like to see someone of the level of Anthony Gordon coming in and stuff like that and how that would work. But I think the opportunity for Gordon to come in would only have presented itself potentially if Diaz left the building. That's what I think anyway. But I'm not sure how Joe felt being used potentially as a make way for the deal, how he felt about that, and, feeling a bit unloved maybe by the club, and then the deal crashed and didn't go through. Obviously, the list down the bottom is everyone that is kind of left. Quite a list. Some we thought might have broke through. Dino has talked about a lot of them, the likes of Kilmes and Musolowski and a number of other ones. And obviously we see there, obviously Bobby Clark going to Salzburg for 10 million, Sepp van den Berg, Brentford 25 million. These are huge figures as well. It was only 2 months ago we were talking about Sepp van den Berg and we were talking 5-6 million. So the work that they're doing on outgoings is outstanding. If they can just couple that work with some incomings, then it will look really, really good, But when you look at it, I also mentioned, I think on one of the podcasts, one of Jack's Anfield, I was in the chat and I mentioned, like, we look at some of these players and we go, like, everyone wanted Adrian gone, and then he goes and then people are going, oh, what are we going to do? You know what I mean? And these other players, there's a list of them in there and stuff like that. Lots of players in there, we would have said, look, they're probably not going to make it. They're not up to the level. But then when they go, it's, oh, why are they going? So we have to kind of make up our mind as well as a fan base. What actually do we want? If we don't think players are of the level, then they should go. Now, obviously not to the point where it exposes us and we don't bring other players in. That still has to happen. But I don't think, like, if Sepp van den Berg is 5th or 6th choice defender, I think getting 25 million off Brentford for him is probably the right move. And I don't think anyone should be complaining about it. Where it leaves us a little bit exposed if suddenly Joe Gomez goes or Nat Phillips goes or whatever it is, you know what I mean? Then we find ourselves a little bit short, and then we have a problem if we don't bring someone in. And that's where I think the anxiety is ratcheted up in the fan base. Looking at the goalkeepers there, we spoke about them already. Ali, there was moves there potentially for the Saudi Pro League, and that might still be there maybe a year down the line. Adrian's gone. We know Quavine is looking for a number one position. He wants to play week in, week out. So the goalkeeping situation is quite fluid. So it's not surprisingly that they went for the boy up the top there. Can't remember his name now. Marashili or something. Is it Mamashili or something? Excellent goalkeeper. Looked at some of the stuff. Looked at some of the highlights. Obviously, they show really, really good stuff. But he's an excellent goalkeeper. I think 30 million is good business. And I think this is us future-proofing. But again, the reaction is, why aren't we signing a six? Why are we signing a goalkeeper? I don't think they're connected. I think they're exclusively separate. And I don't think for a minute we just do be working on one deal. And I don't think for a minute we just do be looking at the 24-25 season. Although that's kind of where we are. You know what I mean? And I think the problem at the moment is, I wonder, are they looking at this season as being a season just to solidify top four potentially? And then next season, see how some of these contract renewals wash out. And then big money is going to have to be spent. I'm not going to mention war chest because we've heard it so many times. But it is a real problem for us in terms of, when you look at the way Man City move and stuff like that and why they're so successful, it's because they continually build on success. They win a treble, they bring players in. They win the league, they bring players in. They're always looking to develop, to raise the level, to lift the level off the floor, all that kind of stuff, in a lot of number of positions. Now, they obviously have that core 6, maybe 7 positions that are solid, that are nailed down. The Haalands of this world, the KDBs of this world, Ederson and nets, John Stones at the back, obviously, who, has fitness issues, but generally doesn't. But really, really, really important that's the kind of thing that we should have done. And we didn't do it when we won the Prem, and we certainly didn't do it when we won the Champions League. And they were the opportunities to refresh the squad and do the things that we wanted to do. And then that coupled with the fact that we've been trying to resolve this 6th position for God knows how long now. 3-4 seasons at this stage. Certainly since we started to see the decline of Fabinho and stuff like that. And he was amazing for us. Just dropped off a cliff. But it's been a real difficult one trying to get that number 6 over the line, and we've tried so many times and we've fallen short so many times. And then a lot of questions come out. Where's the Caicedo money? Where's the Tchouaméni money? Where's the Bellingham money? Where's all this money and stuff like that? And they're all valid conversations, but they also have to be contextualized as well. With the money that we spent on. And some will argue that maybe this money wasn't spent the right way. We're heavily weighted on a lot of left side players and stuff like that. We still haven't truly brought in a player that creates competition and challenges Mo Salah for his position, but also gives us an opportunity to give Mo a bit of a rest at times, to put a different player in. Because he plays so many minutes and stuff like that and all, So we really haven't done that. And this is where we have fallen down. Key positions where we should have been looking at, structuring things in a different way, and we just didn't, and got it wrong. And you'll feel that, at times over a number of seasons as well, we were just that signing short, just that one more player, just that other 20 or 30 million, just to give Jurgen what he needed all the time. And we're getting feels for that again now, unless there's a master plan here at the moment. And we're suddenly middle of next week going to see Michael Edwards and Richard Hughes and Arne Slot sitting in the stand with 2 or 3 players around them. And we can dream, can't we? We can dream, but it's highly unlikely. So it looks like again this season, we're probably going to get caught and we're going to fall short. That's what it looks like. And it's kind of feels a little bit like rinse and repeat, So I don't know. Maybe it's a case we're stockpiling the cash for next summer. Maybe we know that Virgil's gone. Maybe we know that Mo is gone. Maybe we know Trent is gone. Maybe the club know, and that's just the way it is. And you know what I mean? It shouldn't be that way. We should have been much better. And we know that we renewed a lot of contracts in clusters over the last 4 years and stuff like that. So we know that they're coming up. We know that we're going to have other issues in a year or two. We know Allison's contract coming up and all. My guess is Allison exits the building next summer anyway. And I think that's when we'll bring in this new keeper as the number one. I think Queeveen as well will probably move on because I think he'll see that he's not the natural number one to move in when Allison moves out, that it's probably going to be this guy. So he'll probably seek pastures new as well. He's not going to want to stay as the number two to Mavrishili or so. Not Mavrishili, is that his name or something like that? I have to get that name down. I seen a video today actually on Twitter where players were pronouncing their names properly and stuff like that. So fun and games. Let's see, get some comments in here. Champions League draw on Thursday afternoon. Very good. I'll be sitting at a pool drinking cocktails. Trent will sign for Real Madrid in January. I don't think he'll sign in January. I think whatever moves Trent makes, I think they'll be very, very quiet. And it'll be more towards the end of the season. Because I think if Trent signs for Real Madrid in January, I think if that comes out, I think what it will do is it will heavily destabilise our season. And it'll also create a lot of mudslinging in the last 4 or 5 months. So it could create a lot of problems. Coil's in. Big up Niall, mate. Hopefully we'll be doing a few shows this season, mate. We certainly will. Absolutely, 100%. Big up chat. It's my Everest welcome. Big up Coil. The Volcano. Leeds 2-0 up against Sheffield Wednesday. And hello to everyone from Coil. Big up Coil. Thanks for joining us tonight. So yeah, not too much more to report on this. It's been a really disappointing window. I suppose looking at the exits and how they're clearing the decks, and maybe they're just carrying so many players that they've looked at and gone, he's not going to make it, he's not going to make it, he's not going to make it. Let's cut it loose here and get some value while we can. Obviously, if they are staring the barrel of the 3 guys gone, you're staring down the barrel of a lot of money walking out the door for free. Especially last summer, if you could have got that 150 million for Mo Salah. And listen, always Mo and his goals and assists over money for me. But, in terms of the business side of things and stuff like that, we do have to look at that as well. Even though as fans, all we cared about is the squad and winning things and looking at good, entertaining football and all that kind of stuff and mine not. But I think over the last few years, we've grown used to now, having opinions on the finances as well and stuff like that. And, if you had that 150 million and what you could do with it now, there's no saying that FSG, if they got 150 million from Mo Salah last summer, would have given the money to Jurgen, and especially with what their plans were that were unfolding there. And I did say back in January, if you remember as well, I said we just need to get in a player or two. We were going through tough injuries at the time, using a lot of the youth players and stuff that. I did say at the time, if we could get in a player or two, it would make a huge difference in a push in the last 6 or 7 weeks. And because we didn't do it, and obviously with Jurgen's announcement, that's why part of why we didn't do it. That's why we just fell short. And, we weren't a million miles away. Not a million miles away. Our drop off in the last, 4 or 5 games was significant, starting with that Palace game. Well, starting with the United games, I suppose. But we had it there. We were close, and it just fell asunder because we didn't do what we should do, as we've often done. So let's see what happens. 8 days to go. Will I be confident that people will come in? Let's see who else potentially goes out the door. Hope they're not going to leave the gaffer way short of what he needs. It's really, really important that we give Arne everything that he needs. He's stepping into a really tough role, replacing Jurgen, coming into a really competitive squad that competes at the top end with a huge expectation and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's really, really important that we support him as much as we can. I don't know about you guys, but I want signings to come in, but I just cannot wait for this transfer window to be done. And I suppose the expectation set with Edwards coming back and with Hughes coming in, there was a high bar of expectation set there. And obviously, what was needed to bridge the gap with City as well. But it hasn't happened so far, and all the news so far has been quite negative. But try not to be too reactionary on Twitter and stuff like that. There's so many Twitter accounts out there now just talking absolute fucking garbage. And I'm sick of listening to them. You'll see me out there on Twitter absolutely hammering these accounts for the absolute nonsense that they're coming out with. But until next time, folks. Prediction, first of all, for the Brentford game, I think we're going to beat them 3-1. I think if we can kind of come out and play if we could put together the 245 minutes from last week, figure out where the first 45 didn't quite work and what we did good in the second 45. Very, very enthused on Aaron's approach in terms of substitutions. If it's not working, change it. It doesn't matter if it's 5 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, change it. And I think that's the right approach to take. But up the Reds on Sunday, Super Sunday, so you get the feel of that as well. Sky Sports, we've gone from the 12:30 all the way to the Super Sunday, so from one extreme to the other. But the main thing is get the 3 points on the board and move on to next week. Huge game next week at Old Trafford. And how nice it would be to go into the international break with 9 points would be absolutely massive. So let's see what happens. Let's get these predictions in here just to finish out. Daz is going with a 3-0. He's going with Salah with a brace and Nunes, Captain Chaos, with a goal. Interesting. We take that all day, Daz, wouldn't we? How nice would it be to get a 3-0 win and have another clean sheet and all that kind of good stuff? I have to say, I'm excited to see what the starting 11 would be. Would Nunes be included? Would he go with Joey G on the left side? Let's see what happens, Reds, but onwards and upwards. I will catch you on Sunday for the game. And no doubt I'll have some sort of a match reaction after it, but I will be in Spain at that stage, so it'll probably be a video that I upload. As always, folks, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification button, drop a like on the video, and of course, make sure you are supporting all the guys in the chat as well. Everest was in there earlier as well. Kyle's in there, who has his channel as well. Going to be plenty of content between me and Kyle and Warren and Del Boy and all this season as well. So look out for that kind of collaborations and all that kind of stuff as well. But make sure you're supporting everyone as well. Don't let the transfer window absolutely grab you by the nuts and turn you inside out. You know, see it for what it is. See through the bullshit. Don't get too excited. Make sure you're not buying into absolutely stupid nonsense with 8 days to go. And by this time next week, we'll have a fair idea where we stand squad-wise, and then let the uproar start. Cheers, folks. Have a good weekend.